My name is Jen Sunshine, here with my dear friend and longtime creative partner, David Ng, and together we are the co-artistic directors of Love Intersections, a media arts collective that produces intersectional and intergenerational film and artwork from underrepresented communities of color. We're also founding members of the Vancouver Artists Labor Union Cooperative, also known as Value Co-op, which is an artist-run worker cooperative whose goal is to provide flexible living wage income to artists. Before we begin, we want to acknowledge that Hotpot Talks is organized on the unceded and ancestral territories of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh nations. Part of our work as labor activists and queer artists on unceded territories means working in solidarity with ongoing Indigenous struggle for sovereignty, decolonization, reparations, and land back.
So why Hot Pot Talks? As Jen mentioned, Value Co-op is located in the Lim Sai Hor Khao Mok Society building, and over the past 2 years, we've been collaborating with the Lim Association on a project to digitize their archives and create a series of artworks that invites people to learn and engage with their positionality to Chinatowns. Today, we are very excited to be introducing our guest for today's episode. Nomonde Mxhalisa is a fat Black feminist in love with stories. She is fascinated by the ways people's lived realities shape their joys and pains and believes that there is healing to be found in the stories we choose to tell and salvation, perhaps in who we choose to tell them to. Radical softness is her weapon of choice in a world that often casts her as a hard, fat, Black obstacle. Food, hunger, sex, access, and desirability are her favorite topics. She is a feminist scholar. Sorry, let me just try that last part again. She is a feminist scholar. Fat activism, sustainability, climate resilience, and food security are her passions. Please welcome Nomonde.
Welcome, Nomonde.
Hi.
Hi.
I waved as if I was Nomonde. Hello to us all.
This is obviously a very different setup than our normal Hot Pot Talks. Nomonde, can you tell us where you and David are right now?
So David and I are in Cape Town, in Greenpoint in Cape Town. We're looking at the harbour and the lights, and it is stunning and gorgeous. And it's good to be back after 4 long years of not seeing each other. It's good to be back.
Okay, so it's been quite a while, but obviously you've known each other, before 4 years. So how did you and David meet? And I love your bio and what you said about your affinity for story. And so I'm curious about your story with David and how did you two meet? And tell us about that.
Yeah, so David and I met in 2011 when I decided that I needed to come to an understanding of my own feminism. I've been a feminist since I was 8 years old, and I finally decided to actually study it and figure out what this thing is, what is it I believe? How do I move in the world? And how do I give voice to the things that wound me, Because if you can't give them voice, how do you fix them? So I saw the Gender and Transformation Studies program with UCT, and I applied, and I came through. I remember the first day I saw David, our first class together, and he came in and he had this dramatic swoop of hair, very gothic romance, and these beautiful tattoos, and he was just such a breath of fresh air, just this amazing human being speaking in ways I had never heard a cis man speak before, about subjects I'd never heard a cis man even address, and with such authenticity and sincerity. And I remember thinking in that moment, like, that's my baby right there. Like, definitely.
So you decided to adopt him.
Yeah. It's like, come to my bosom child.
Well, I came from a women's studies background, but I was also at that time trying to figure out what I wanted to do. Having a women's studies degree, there's a lot of, ignorance around the degree, and then a lot of sort of pressures around, like, what are you going to do with this degree, right? It's already not only is it a humanities degree that has a lot of these connotations and assumptions about what it is. On top of that, it's a feminist theory degree, right? And so to be honest, I think internally I had felt a little bit of pressure from my community, but also from like the broader society to sort of find something that it was legibly productive, if you will, right? And to me at that time, having an MA, those letters after my name, was a way that I could prove myself, I think, honestly.
That
And
hasn't changed because you're now doing your PhD.
Jen and I always joke that it's like, like the what they call like the COVID variants. It's just like it just keeps growing, like the letters after my name. Anyway, but yeah, and so I was looking into different programs, and the African Gender Institute, which is where we met, from the University of Cape Town, had such cool scholarship coming out of it. It publishes Feminist Africa. And I think at the time I was also thinking about I felt drawn to decentering the Western feminist scholarship that you're really immersed with in growing up in Vancouver. And so, yeah, I moved here, and I was immediately drawn to Nomonde, your energy. I remember on the first day of school, I remember you and like only one other person, just because you just really, really had a glow. And we've been BFFs ever since.
That's amazing. So yeah, I mean, Nomonde, we also have a story in the sense that, I've heard your name forever. As long as I've known David, I have known Nomonde's name. And I had the privilege.
True.
Yeah, that is true.
Yeah. And I've had the honor and the privilege of meeting you in person, I think a couple of times when you visited Canada. And I think at one point we also we filmed a short kind of a doc with you. And this was in like early days of Love Intersections. And I believe there were two that we created with you, and I think that was also when David was like visiting you in South Africa, and while you were on vacationing, I think he just pointed a camera at around at the two of you, and those two videos to this day still have a reach, because we still get reached out to by educators and also just people on the internet being like, hey, can we use this film, very short film, and it was called The Politics of Sexy, in which you talk about your Blackness within your body, but also you talked about the sexual currency of being a Black woman. And I'm curious because, of course, race is such an integral part of Love Intersections, and it's literally what we do to center these underrepresented stories of BIPOCs and POCs and people of color. I'm curious, how does race play a role in your relationship and your friendship with each other?
Mm-hmm. Race is huge. It's a big, big button, right?
Yep.
I'm thinking of when we're little kids and you meet a friend in the shop, and it doesn't matter what race the friend is, the two of you start talking, and suddenly you're busy, you're running around, you're playing like 5, 6. But as you get older, the racial lived reality that you have makes it so that when you are with your friends, who they are and how they understand race, their race and your race, plays hugely into whether or not they are a safe space for you or another place of labor and pain, right? That's how I judge my friendships. So when I call you my friend, you are a place of safety. You're a place of peace. You're a place of joy, right? A place of understanding. And that's what David is to me. And David is those things because he doesn't shy away from understanding my racialized and lived experience. He moves in a certain way because of who he is and what his race is and what his sexuality is. All those intersections come into play for David as well. But he also takes the time to understand how I move differently from him, because of my intersections and how I am perceived and how I move and how people engage with me. And the best thing about him is that I can come to him about things that have happened to me, and I am never met with disbelief. My experiences are not questioned. I am never derided or trivialized, right? I am met with authentic understanding, with comfort, with solace. He meets me as someone who is willing to use the privilege that he has to protect me when we move in spaces together. And he can see that, oh my goodness, people are coming for her. People are
Yeah.
coming for her because she's fat. People are coming for her because she's black. So I'm going to use the privilege I have because I move differently in this particular space to shield her from that. And unfortunately, I can't say that about many other people unless they're
Even
black.
people of color too.
No,
I
I
think
don't
that
trust
it's
black
such
men like that. I don't
yeah,
trust black men like that. You know what I'm saying? I
yeah,
don't. I do
yeah,
not.
yeah,
Straight black men, I don't trust them like that. I don't.
yeah, yeah.
But I think there's always been a really deep trust between us
Mm,
two that's been cultivated over many years. But you've also been very generous and patient with, and we've been and I think because we are very early on established that trust.
yes.
Um, when I've because I don't walk in your body, when I have questions or when I don't when I say something stupid, we can have those conversations, and we
Yes.
can also talk about our experiences that we don't have
Yes.
of each other, but also find language. I think this is sort of going back to Jen, what you were talking about some of the videos that we've made with you
Mm,
in the past, was we've been able to find like different conversations and language and stories where we do find those similarities,
yes.
and how we can organize and build capacity and community together too.
Absolutely.
And I think that's special, because I think that
Mm,
a lot of times, and Jen, with love intersections, these are conversations that often we have too, is like, how do we address racial hierarchy without replicating the hierarchy, right?
mm,
Recognizing that, like we walk in different privileges,
yes.
even as racialized people, but
Mhm.
also not replicated. And I think that sort of, I've loved sort of the work that Nomonde and I have been able to do together about finding different, finding different strategies towards, building coalitions and
Mm.
solidarity. Yeah.
You know, a large part of friendship, I think, is actually I have to go back. I read something just the other day, and this person said that I would rather be trusted than loved. I thought that was really interesting,
Mm.
right?
Wow.
Because the reality of the matter is you cannot build anything if you don't trust the person you're trying to build with. Yeah.
Mm.
Like love comes from trust. For me, anyway. I don't know how you
Yeah,
feel about
yeah,
it.
yeah.
I can't love you if I don't trust you. And
Mhm.
so I think what was critical, was absolutely critical to our relationship, is that David established that he was someone I could trust right from the beginning, right? I could trust that he wouldn't humiliate me. I
Mhm.
could trust that when I was in trouble, he would help me. I could trust that I could cry to him about the things that hurt me, and he would see me and he would hear me and he would feel me. And I hope that I have reciprocated
Hmm.
and shown you that kind of care and love as well. And because I was able to trust you with that, things, when we have disagreements or we don't understand each other or we speak past each other, you can see past those things because you've built that. There's trust first,
Yeah,
right? And then the love is there, and the love, with love, you can kind of come through anything, I think.
yeah. We're also Leos, if you can't tell.
But I've always
Fiercely loyal.
I'm so curious how Leos are non-competitive. Do you ever find yourself in a competitive, situation with one another in terms of like, yeah, just the
Mm,
Leo competition? No,
I don't know. I think maybe
like
because we're
who's
so
more
different, maybe.
fabulous?
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah. You
Yeah.
know, the thing with Leos, people think Leos are going to compete with each other. The thing with Leo seeing Leo is that whole game recognized game, right? Like, you're fabulous, I'm fabulous, let's be fabulous together. And his fabulous actually adds to my amazingness. So I want you to be even more fabulous because then I'm more fabulous. That's the Leo dynamic. We don't
so
compete
true.
with
That
each other.
is,
No, because,
you
and this is the
accelerate
thing
each other's
people don't
fabulous.
understand about Leos. I love hanging around amazing human beings. The one thing I've never understood is when people are jealous in friendships. I don't get that. Why am I jealous of my friend? Like, you need to succeed because your success shines a light on me, and I'm bigger because I'm with you, and I hope you feel the same way. And I think that's our dynamic, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's really that's beautiful, actually.
No, I was gonna ask Nomonde. Nomonde, you came out recently. You wrote a book chapter,
Mhm.
and I attended the launch, and it was really amazing. Tell us about, if you can tell us about the. It was an anthology, yeah.
Yeah. So it's called the Routledge International Book of Fat Studies. And it was edited by the now late Kat Posey, Dr. Kat Posey, who was genuinely one of the most amazing human beings I've had the pleasure of knowing. Kat was
Yeah.
amazing. And she was a light in the fat community. That woman, yeah, she changed a lot of people's lives, and she did a lot, and for me as well. And also edited by Sonia Renee Taylor, who is a phenomenal author, poet, and activist as well. And what I wrote about was my fatness and my blackness and how they intersect, and how those intersections impact my desirability and the security, the safety, and access that I'm offered in the world.
Mhm.
Um, and I wrote about those things because those are things that hurt me. They still hurt me to this day. Um, the chapter I wrote about starts out speaking about my first experience as a fat and racialized person when I was at Rhodes University. I did my undergraduate degree at Rhodes University in Grahamstown in South Africa. And I was studying journalism. And I was not one of those teenagers that partied. So Rhodes was my first kind of experience with partying, right? I
Mhm.
went to a convent, and I was a proper convent girl. So Rhodes was like the first time I was out there. And I loved it. We danced on tables, we walked barefoot, we were dirty and grimy, and it was wonderful. It was just this wild sense of liberation. That was Grahamstown and Rhodes for me.
Mm.
And then one night, I'll never forget, I was dancing and my friends had left. I didn't want to go home. My friends left early. And I stuck around with this group of white girls that I was in res with.
Ooh.
And as we're dancing, this large white boy comes at me, grabs me, and kissed me just out of the blue, right? And I was so shocked and so revolted and so horrified. Like I'll never forget that sort of gut churning, like yuck, like what the hell was that, right? Out of the blue. And then he moved away, and then him and his friends pointed at me and laughed about it. And I remember turning to this white girl I was with, and I was like, that boy just like he just kissed me, like, and what the hell was it? And this girl said to me, she's like, that guy, are you sure he's really good looking? Like, are you
Mm.
sure that happened? And I was like, yeah, it did. And that experience cemented the way people treat you when they perceive you as ugly and you
Mhm.
face violence, particularly sexual violence. How you are disbelieved if you move in a body that is ugly, because people conflate sexual violence with desire, right? When
Mhm.
it shouldn't, it's not the same thing.
Mm.
And because they do that, if you are perceived as undesirable, the sexual violence that you face becomes invisible.
Mm.
People mock you. Well, you should be grateful. You got all that attention. Oh my God, why are you upset about this? That hot guy kissed you. What? Why are you upset? Like,
Mhm.
so my fat black body doesn't get to be violated because it doesn't deserve care. It doesn't deserve love. It doesn't deserve tenderness,
Mm.
right? And that was the experience I wrote about in my contribution to that particular book, and how that has shaped the way I move in the world, how it
Mhm.
has shaped the spaces I access, how it has shaped my rage. There's times I'm very angry about
Mhm.
that. Um, very angry and very hurt still to this day. And how it has shaped my determination to move in a way that protects people like me, you know? The fat black ones who are ugly and can't be hurt because of it.
Mm.
But
Mhm.
people too were tender too, and we
Mhm.
deserve care too.
Well, we know because a number of things is at play in that particular scenario that you experienced. First, I'm so sorry that that happened to you. What's infuriating about that situation is that not only did this man, um, violate your personal space and your body unconsensually, you know, And so then he had the audacity of accessing your body without consent, and B, the whiteness of that girl, who you turned to, who was supposed to be in solidarity with you on the matters of consent, because surely she would understand, as a woman in a woman's body.
Yep.
Surely she would understand, but instead returned, or mutated that violation by turning it back onto you, being like, well, you either, by questioning you, by gaslighting you, right? So that's what's infuriating, because she's supposed to know better. But of course, then the intersection of your Blackness and your fatness and those the desirability, of course, then is what's the word, is not triggering for her, but is actually revealing her deepest, kind of like darkest
Insecurity.
insecurities. Yeah, exactly. That in fact, whiteness and white women, white people in particular, they don't want to be white. They actually, deep down, they revere other bodies that are different from them. We know this. The way that they appropriate blackness, they appropriate all of the things that are, mainstream and desirable about blackness and black culture, right? So that's what's infuriating about it. I'm so sorry.
Yeah, race only matters to them until it serves them.
Yeah.
I'm curious, Nomonde, you've also, because before we started recording, I was also asking about, because what was really amazing about the launch of that book was, I remember attending it. It was like at a weird time in Vancouver, but I remember the person in New Zealand, it was like 4 a.m. or something.
Yeah.
But I was really struck by just the wide range of geographical spaces. So I have two questions. I mean, I'm curious about what was that like, forming this sort of anthology? I know you weren't an editor, but what was that process like? And also sort of some of the cross border or regional conversations that have been having around the topic.
Yes, absolutely. So what's interesting about Fatness is it is in some ways contextual, right? And let me give you an example, because I'm sure most of the audience are not familiar with Fatness as an activist thing. But for instance, you can have a fat body in the US, right? Let's say the United States. And it's perceived in a certain way. And you wear a size 16, and maybe you've got a small waist, big breast, a big butt, and thick thighs. And you come to South Africa and you're average. You're not a fat person. And when you go to fat girls in South Africa and you're like, I'm fat, they're like, no. No, you're the girl everyone wants to marry. What are you talking about? You're not fat, right? So that's how fat is contextual. That's just one of the ways it's contextual. Fat is impacted by many different things as well. Fatness has intersections like every other element of being. It has intersections that impact how you're perceived, how you moved in that fat body. So having those conversations with people from the US, people from India, people from Japan, people from Australia, it was so, it just opens you up, right? Hearing their stories, hearing how the stories echo each other, like the common threads that we pull from those things, the ways they differ, and how we can learn and empower each other because of those differences. And overall, I think what was so important, what was so special about that experience is that in most fat activist spaces, the voices of the global South are absent. You don't hear from Africa. You don't hear from South America. You don't hear from Southeast Asia. You don't hear from these places. And what I loved about the editors of this particular book, Kat and Sonia, is they went out of their way to find activists in those spaces. They looked for us. And they said this book is richer because your voices are here. Because we all speak from a different context and from different perspectives. If certain voices are not heard, we cannot know the full story. And that was such a wonderful experience, such an empowering experience. And also just being with fat community, it really is something to be in a fat community. And it's rare. It's rare to be in fat community. in my country particularly, because I'm considered fat in my country, but there's a lot of people who in the US would be considered fat are not fat, which is why a lot of my fat American friends are like, but those girls are fat. I'm like, no, they're fat in America and South Africa, they're not fat. And so they don't move as fat people. They don't suffer the oppressions I do. You know what I'm saying? And so they can't speak the way I do. They can't speak on the things I do. They don't understand where I'm coming from. Whereas women of the similar size in the US would do so. You know, it's mind-blowing. But it's so good to be in a fat space where people aren't trying to change their bodies. People aren't trying to morph and mutate. You're not talking about dieting. You're not talking about minimizing yourself, because let me assure you, as a fat person, that's like 90% of the conversations people are trying to have with you all the time. All the time. I can't move without someone going, have you heard about this new weight loss thing? Or people literally running after me to be like, take this protein shake, you'll be thinner. Like, my God, did I ask for this? Like, oh my word, you know?
Yeah.
So it's so good and it's so wonderful and so peaceful being in spaces where people are like, how do we help each other without minimizing each other? Without talking about how we shrink? How can we just be? How can we be joyfully? How can we be powerfully? How do we impact medicine? How do we impact politics? How do we impact food security, environment, money, the financial sector? How do we as fat people move in these spaces so that we are empowered in these spaces without having to become thin or tell anyone that we are trying to lose weight or post videos of ourselves exercising to prove to thin people that we exercise? No. None of that. And that was what was so wonderful about that space and moving in that space. I really loved it.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it's so blatant, the limitations that society puts on different bodies, right? Like, I think thin bodies are allowed to eat a hamburger in public. Thin bodies are allowed to move in this like liberated free way, whereas the kind of like lens, the eyes that is, you know, constantly placed in policing on fat bodies is so much more different. And God forbid, sometimes you just want to have you know, a salad, and that is not, and someone will be like, oh, are you, you know, they're just policing you no matter what you eat or don't eat.
I have to tell you about the salad. I went to
Tell
a
me.
friend's baby shower, girl. I went to this friend's baby shower and it was a buffet set up. And there was, I actually love salad. And I don't talk about it because it's just, it's actually, people come at you with the wildest things for loving salad and being fat.
Exactly.
And I dished up all this yummy green salad and had all this onions. It had a rocket, and I love rocket. I just love the flavor and I was so happy. And I'm eating the salad. And this friend of my friend was like, so do you actually eat that way or are you just pretending for us?
Wow. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah, she's so lucky I didn't smack her into next week.
Okay.
I mean, I was trying to be very polite, and I was like, okay, let's not talk. Let's you and I not talk.
Wow.
Yeah.
Again, it's the like this assumption that they have access to your body and to how you eat. Like the intimacies of your body is so on display 24/7. That's what's so interesting, is that they don't go around, you know, policing how, you know, a normal size body eats, but they will police a bigger size body. How, you know, no matter what you do, it's being policed.
And even ask you questions like, so are you aware of nutrition? Do you understand how calories work? Like, do you know that, like, I have a brain. I don't have fat in my brain. Like, I can think, I can read, I am educated, I am not lazy, I am not stupid. Okay, I shouldn't have said stupid, I apologize. But it's
this dehumanizing aspect. Like,
like you're just incapable of taking care of yourself because you happen to move in a fat body. And
I'm curious, Nomonde, if you can contextualize even more, because I don't know what the medical system, you know, and professional care is like in South Africa. But we know that in the, you know, US and in Canada, you know, not only are women, you know, how heart attacks in women show up differently than in men's, how Black women are consistently gaslit and not believed when they are in pain. And that includes fat bodies as well. So, you know, so I'm curious what the medical kind of, you know, professions, when you go to doctors in South Africa, what is that experience like there?
So let me contextualize it more and give you an understanding. So it's a two kind of tier thing. There are those of us who can afford private healthcare, right? I'm one of those people because of the job I have, the money I make, etc. And then there are those who can't afford private healthcare and go into our government healthcare system, right? And that's free. What then happens is that the access you have, not to the doctors, but to the equipment that is available in those spaces becomes an issue. So for instance, if you are over, I think it's 150 kilograms, you don't fit in things like MRI machines.
Right.
And that's big, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Certain medications they're giving you don't work the same way on you as they do on thin people.
Yeah.
That's an issue. That could be like life altering. You could die as a consequence of that. Not only that, and this is a global thing, fat people are constantly misdiagnosed or ignored completely.
Because the solution is you just lose weight.
Lose weight. Everyone always says just lose weight. Meantime, most of the things that are wrong with these fat people cannot be addressed with weight loss. Things like chronic arthritis or pain, issues with how your bones are developing. I mean, cancer. There are people who've had cancer and been told to lose weight, and doctors have not looked for the cancer, and these people have died as a consequence. This is reality. Fat people are not allowed to get certain organs. In fact, I think all of them. We can't get organ donations. So if you have failing kidney, you're not getting one because you're fat. Automatically disqualifies you. I mean, you're ignored. Your pain is ignored. I had fibroids so I suffered from fibroids from 2010 to 2015. And I had no idea what was wrong with me. I went to doctor after doctor after doctor. Look, this is a bit graphic, but I bled for a year. For a year. And every doctor I went to said to me, you're bleeding because you're fat. It's just fatness. Fat women just bleed.
Wow.
Your uterus, it's just you've got so much fat and it's making the blood in your uterus. Like, medical professionals saying this to me, refusing to give me the treatment I needed. Finally, I found a doctor, Black woman, who said to me, listen, I'm sending you from MRI. We need to figure out what's going on here because no one should have a period for 365 days of the year. Yeah. The fibroids finally showed up. Right. She then sent me to a doctor who actually listened to the pain I was in. He actually paid attention. He was a specialist in embolization. He embolized my fibroids. When I tell you this person cared about the pain I was in, he would say to me, listen, this is an incredibly painful procedure. Are you sure I'm giving you enough morphine? I'd never had that before. You know? Yeah. I'd never had that before. Yeah. Care that was real, that was authentic, and that was actually a solution for me. And when I say that changed my life, Jen, I'm not even playing. Yeah. I'm not. That changed my entire life. I became a different person, you know? And I'm so lucky that I survived the things I went through. Many of us don't.
Well, and I think, it's one of the realizing, and again, I have a very different experience with the medical profession than what you're describing. But what I'm also reflecting on is I also had this assumption growing up only until a couple of years ago that the medical profession, you listen to your doctor, sciences, right? It's right or wrong, and it's an equation, right? I'm being facetious, but, and it was actually the last time I was here that this happened to me. So I got about a tooth abscess, and my doctor, and because since I was a child, when I was a child, I was allergic to penicillin. So I've been telling my doctors that I've been allergic to penicillin. And basically when I went back to Canada and to treat my abscess, they gave me this horrible, horrible antibiotic that I'm still recovering from in terms of my gut flora. And so because it was so horrible, horrific, I asked my then family doctor, can I get tested for penicillin? Because I would like to, because I hear most people grow out of it, and I would really like to be able to take light penicillins as opposed to these horrible antibiotics. And what he said to me was, no, that test doesn't exist. And that really clicked to me because, and I think, this comes from a familial, my trust in science also comes from a family intergenerational trauma of like, you know, under Japanese occupation in Hong Kong, where you have access to very different tiers of medicine. And so, you know, I've had many relatives die, you know, ancestors die because of class and poverty, because they didn't access certain medicines. And so when we access like universal healthcare in Canada, I was kind of grown up like, you know, raised to like listen to your doctor, right? And that experience, you know, and I'm not in any way trying to equate what you were just describing, but that really also changed the way that I navigated healthcare, that it's, and also understand sciences, going back to the conversation earlier around, you know, what I was inferring of people, you know, saying the humanities is this very wishy-washy thing. Well, you know, and but comparing it to science as this very clear thing.
It's not.
It's not.
Yeah.
No, it's not.
And so,
No, it's not.
yeah.
And doctors, you know, they don't always read up on like new developments and updates to journals, you know. You get stagnant as the longer you go and the older you go as well.
Yeah.
So it's always good
and
to
they come to the work with a bias, right? They have their own internal biases, and that impacts how they work and how they prescribe and the things they are interested in and actually find out about.
Yeah.
All of that needs to be,
because the default body that is studied is still a white body, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. A white male body, in fact, and that matters, right? That matters, especially when it comes to things like feminine reproductive health, and the things we've been put through as a consequence of that.
But I can't even think about what's going on in the US right now with
it's horrific. It's horrific. It really is bad. But you know, my sister's a doctor and my mom's a nurse. Most of my aunts are nurses or have worked in the medical field. So I come from a long line of medical professionals, and I fight with them to this day.
Do you?
Yeah.
What do you fight about?
I fight with them because even they speak, you can hear how they speak about people and they make these judgments, and then they're like, but that's the science. I'm like, no, you can't just say that. Like, there's more to the healing of the human body than just this book and what it's telling you. I fully believe in science. I'm not saying don't believe in science. I fully believe in science. I believe that modern medicine can be miraculous. I'm so thankful that it exists. I am not one of those people who only wants to take a herb and think I'm going to get better. No.
Yeah.
No, I believe in medicine and how it can help us. But I also know that doctors are not gods and they're not infallible. And you must do the work. You must advocate for yourself. You must read up for yourself. You must be willing to argue. It's your body. Yeah. You need to know about your body and fight for the rights of your body.
I'm curious. One thing I was going to ask you, Nomonde, we've talked about this before. I jokingly tease you sometimes because sometimes the things you find on the internet, my friend, are like. But we've talked about like, you know, you've shared with me some of like the finding online community around some of the things that you've been you know, expressing and over this past conversation. So I'm curious, like, what role has the internet played in some of the conversations that you've been having and the organizing and now some of the writing?
Yeah, massive. Massive. My fat activism was born on the internet. Yeah. Absolutely, fully 100%. Because no one in my life, no one was saying to me that it's okay to be fat. Not a single human being ever said that to me, ever in my life. I've been fat since I was around 4. And since I've been 4, I've been trying to lose weight. Since I've been 4, I've been fantasizing about cutting bits of myself off and slicing into myself and eating tapeworms and getting so sick that my jaw gets crushed and then I inadvertently somehow lose weight since I was 4.
Wow.
No one ever had the conversation with me that, you know what, being fat is not a crime. You have a right to exist exactly as you are now. You don't have to change. I found that on the internet. I found that in online fat forums. I found that on a very old and I think now defunct platform called Dimensions. It wasn't always the healthiest space. Fat activism, like many other spaces, is heavily sexualized.
Yeah.
But it was in that sexualization that I found myself too, right? So the first time I ever heard the phrase BBW, and I use that now, and it makes me sad actually to use that now because it has been co-opted
Yes.
by
The porn industry.
No, it was always a porn. It was always porn. So BBW has always been porn, but it was co-opted by girls with thin waist and big butts. That's what a BBW is now. When people say BBW, that is not what it was.
Right.
BBW was girls like me, a big, beautiful woman. That's what it was. You had a big belly. You had back rolls. You had cellulite, right? You didn't have a little waist and a big butt. You had a double chin. You had freaking arm fat, okay? Like, that's a BBW. And now you get this super sanitized, oh, she got a little waist and a big butt. That's a BBW now. And I'm still really upset about that, because those words were stolen from our community.
Yeah.
They were stolen from the fat community. They were stolen from us and are used now in music videos by Drake. And you're like, what is this? Like, what are you showing the world, right? And actual fat bodies get left out of these conversations. Those of us who are genuinely fat are still targeted and attacked. When you say BBW, most people are not thinking Lizzo, right? Because Lizzo doesn't have the thin waist and the big butt. She doesn't fall into that. She's proper fat, which is why she's one of those fat public figures that are constantly attacked. She's constantly under fire because she's actually living in a fat body that people don't like, that people don't approve of. She's fat in the wrong places. I've literally been told that, oh, my dear, you're fat in the wrong places, literally. And they will come for you for that. So it was so important for me in those online spaces, being with fat people that look like me, who were empowering me, meeting people who desired me exactly as I was. I even fell into the feederism community for a bit there. You know the British feederism?
No.
So they're called feeders. These people like to feed women and make them fatter.
Yeah.
You heard about it, right?
It's a kink
So
thing.
I dabbled in that for a bit.
Yeah.
And I mean, with any fetish, it has its dark side. But
yeah,
meeting people who wanted me to be fatter was great. I was like, what? I'm gonna eat that pizza, okay? I'm gonna eat it. And learning that I didn't have to constantly be punishing myself.
Yeah.
Constantly living in fear, this abbreviated, tortured life of minimizing everything I was and everything I ate and everything I felt and experienced. That was the internet. And to this day, my fat bezies are still online. I'm lucky enough to have them in real life as well now. I'm so blessed that it became a real life thing as well. But the internet still has power. We still organize there. We still speak up there. We create music. We create images. We create stories. And there's still power in what is on offer there. Yeah, definitely.
David, how are you? Sorry, we should mention that there is a 9-hour difference. So what is morning for me, and I'm all energetic and excited, is actually
it's dinner time for Nomonde and
I. So there's a dip in energy.
I wonder, I know, this was an old project, but The Day I Swallowed the Sun. Can you maybe describe to us or tell us about the inspiration behind it? And
so The Day I Swallowed the Sun was born when I came to Cape Town to study gender and transformation. And when I met David, and I met my friend Malika and Audrey, and I met other women, other Black African women who were feminists, and who lived in bodies that were not considered small in the communities that they came from. Women who could speak to me about their fatness in a way that wasn't only about weight loss. It's so powerful to meet women who don't, even thin women, who are not constantly speaking about weight loss. I think it is the disease of women, because you can't be in a space with women without speaking about weight loss. It's horrific. But it was so good meeting these people in real life. And then I met a lot of queer people too. We joined this lesbian group that I discovered my lesbians. I have lesbian friends. But it was the first time I engaged so fully in their lesbianness, and honestly found such sanctuary in their presence as well. I'm bisexual, right? Which means often I'm invisible. Like biness tends to be made invisible. And I'm not going to go into that now. I understand why that is. It's not great, but it is what it is.
Oh, it's terrible. The bi erasure and all of that.
Yeah. But meeting lesbian women who were, firstly, out and proud and beautiful and so sexy and just so like content in themselves, right? Not talking about men. That was so awesome. Like you're in a community of women who are not talking about men. Like that was
because
amazing.
the male gaze doesn't exist there.
That was epic. I love that. And finding out that there's people who live lives that we don't see them. We didn't at the time. I think there's a lot more visibility now. But in 2011, we didn't see those lives. We didn't see those people. We didn't see their joy. And I wanted to show people that there's more to us than suffering. You know, I was so sick of, you know, every time you turn on the TV and there's a fat girl on the TV, she's crying. I don't want to be fat. I was like, if I see one more fat girl crying about being fat, I'm actually going to have to shoot someone. Like, this is ridiculous. And it's a lie. It's a lie. That's another thing. There are those of us who love this life and who love being bodied the way we are bodied. And I wanted to show that to the world. Like, there's so many of us who live in bodies that people think are disgusting, right? Yeah. You're revolting, like you're a slug. You shouldn't be that happy to be alive. And we are ecstatic. We are thriving. And that's where that project came from.
I'd also just really loved the title.
It's a great title. It's a great title.
Another question I've been wanting to ask you, and I'm going to also preface it. I'm going to try to do it the way that Jen asks it, because you've been to Vancouver, and Jen asked. Actually, Jen, why don't you know what I'm going to ask?
Oh, I am going to ask. So, what I normally like to ask, especially for people who don't live in Vancouver or not from Vancouver, and you know, and the experience that you have visiting Vancouver, what has that been like here in your body, but also, you know, in other parts of the world, you know, what's different about that experience? Because there's very little, you know, there's visibly, Black bodies are not very visible in Vancouver.
Yeah, and we want to give you permission. Like, this isn't, we Jen and I like to critique the spaces that we're in.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Feel free.
Go for it.
That's right. Go to town.
Yeah.
It was confusing at first.
Yeah.
Trying to read what people are and how they move and how they're going to engage with me. You know, it's not a great thing, but because of who I am and how I move, I'm often on the defensive. Like, I'm often waiting for people to attack me. So when I go into a new situation, I read the room before I assert anything about myself. And I kind of try to suss out how much danger I'm going to be in, or how much flack I'm going to get based on who I am.
Yeah.
And what was interesting about Vancouver was how sterile it was. I didn't expect that. I know maybe this is not nice, but I find often very white spaces are very sterile. There's a coldness to it, a hardness. I didn't understand it. I remember being in David's building, and here you greet. This is how we say it. You greet. If you don't greet, you're
not
a rude child, and your mama's gonna tell you about it. Okay, you greet.
Yeah.
And so this is how I approach. So you walk into the lift, for instance. You guys call it a lift, right?
Elevator.
Yes.
That thing.
Yeah.
You walk into the lift, and there's people, right? And here in South Africa, you walk in and you're like, Dumelang or Molweni, how are you guys? You greet and you smile and you meet people's eyes. In Vancouver, I walked into the lift and the people are doing this.
On their phone. Like,
I was like, what is this? What is this energy?
Yeah.
So I'm like, hello. And I look at this dude. He was wearing like a cap. He was like, oh. He's like, hi. So I said to David, I'm like, David, what is this?
Yeah.
What is this energy? And he's like, no. It's polite not to acknowledge each other here. That's considered good manners.
Yeah.
Whereas if you don't acknowledge
polite,
people
not
here,
friendly here.
Yes, it's polite, not friendly.
Yeah.
Whereas if you don't acknowledge people here, you're starting a fight. Like, why would you do that to someone? Why are you not seeing someone like that? I really struggled with that. That I was invisible in Vancouver, but also not in a way I enjoyed. I didn't enjoy that.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
there's a coldness to it. I didn't like it. It felt as if I could vanish screaming right now and no one would lift
Yeah.
a finger.
Yeah.
That's what it felt like. Whereas in South Africa, you know, someone would come to your help. I didn't get that sense
Yeah.
in your space.
And it's
No, they say that you're supposed to scream fire and not help so that people come. People come for fire. They won't come when you say help.
That's wild.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it's a very cold space, and you know, I when we moved, so because you were staying with me in that building, when I moved to, you know, during right before the pandemic, I was like, you know, David, you're gonna be one of those people that like knock on your neighbor's door for a cup of sugar. You're gonna be the friendly, like I still don't know my neighbors' names.
That's wild.
Yeah,
I don't understand that.
yeah. Yeah. But it's also like I think that like, you know, I'm thinking, Jen, it's making me think about like earlier in the season, like conversations that we've had around abolition and the connection between abolition and your community and like deep relationships in your community, right? And thinking about like, you know, in a world without police and prisons, what does that look like? And part and parcel of that is having those relationships in your community that you can respond to when you're having difficulty, right? Sorry, I know I'm kind of it's tangential, but it's sort of that's what's coming up for me is that sort of in Vancouver, what have we sort of fostered in terms of that fracture or hard coldness, right?
You know how I think about it. So I'm speaking from my experience of white colonialism in South Africa. I'm not going to speak about it in Canada. But what I've noticed with white people is they're big on owning their things. It's all about private property. This is my thing, right? And you don't get to touch my thing. So then they put up these walls around their things. And the walls are not just physical walls. There's walls of silence as well, right?
Yeah.
Walls of we will engage with that one, we will not engage with that one. And that's the sense I got in Canada.
Yeah.
Like, all these shut doors, like there were all these millions of departments with the doors just shut, and I'd be like, "Oh, who lives next door, David?" They'd be like, "I don't know who that is." Yeah. And I think that plays into that sort of because there's no sense of shared ownership. What else do you share?
Right.
What else do you share?
Yeah,
that's the sense I got.
Yeah. That makes sense. I'm curious. I mean, I'm also thinking about so I was thinking just to change the topic a little bit, or to I was thinking the last time that we saw each other was when you were in Vancouver. And thinking about, and I was also thinking about when we've traveled together. Yeah, what has that been like? Where do we want to go next?
Well, I'm also curious, like, you know, how people perceive you two. What is your perception of how people perceive you two when you are together?
Couple.
Yeah.
They think you're a couple?
Yeah.
Amazing.
So we had a moment even today. We were at this little beach cafe and we're taking pictures and laughing. And I looked up literally as David was snapping the picture. I happened to look up. And I'm not exaggerating when I say everybody in the restaurant was staring at us.
Everybody.
I'm not exaggerating.
Everybody.
And this is South Africa, right? This is supposed to be my stomping ground. This is supposed to be home. But even here, we're kind of freakish to people, I guess.
Yeah. And just some context, and again, different experiences, but I also get stares here. For I'm sure other reasons, but then like the combination, people are like,
so they're confused because they're reading you as possibly gay. Do you code as gay?
Do they read me as gay?
I don't even know.
Because I've been kind of assessing it here and now because I mean, so Nomonde and I met in 2011. It's been 11 years.
Amazing, right?
But the stares are different. Like I mean, when I came here in 2011, like people would scream on the streets like China, Kung Fu, like how is your Uncle Bruce Lee? Like that kind of like energy, right? And then and I'm laughing because I mean none of it was like violent or anything, but it was annoying. Ugh. But it's been so coming here in like 2017 and then now it's a very different. I mean, the stairs are still there, but it's not as like. I haven't had that type of interaction yet, but still, the combination of the two of us, people are just like, what is happening?
And it's funny. So you either get the overly interested people or the aggressors, which is strange because there are some people who sort of see us and get angry.
Yeah,
makes no sense because it's like you literally know nothing about our dynamic or who we are to each other, but you're mad about it. You're already like wanting to fight about this. You're glaring at us. You know, you're looking suspicious. What is that? It's wild. But yeah, I mean, when we've traveled, look, you and I, David and I have mostly traveled, I guess in the third world, if you'd call it that, Mexico, Bali.
New York, though, that was funny.
New York. Oh. New York was interesting, though, because New York was interesting.
Can we tell the cab story? We have to tell the cab story. It was really funny. So the guy is like trying to be friendly, you know, and he wasn't white too. He wasn't white. And he said, you know, he asked like, oh, you know, where you're from, what you're at, you have an accent, like where are you from? And you're like, oh, I'm from South Africa. Oh, where in South Africa? From South Africa. Where in South Africa? You were just like the country.
And he was mad. He got mad. He's like, listen, why are you being difficult? I'm asking you where you're from. I'm like, and David even was like, South Africa.
The Republic of South Africa.
That's so funny.
Was
he really embarrassed? I hope he wasn't.
No, he wasn't. Not at all.
Totally just.
He was so annoyed with us. But New York was interesting because I was only visible because of David in New York. So that was so strange to me. So I love the diversity in New York. I loved it. I love the fact that my wild hair and my near nakedness and my boobs out, no one looked at that. But it wasn't in a negative way either. I wasn't ignored. People were friendly. There were so many amazing friendly people in New York.
Yeah.
Genuinely friendly, helpful, kind human beings that we met there. But when we went to places like restaurants, clubs, they wouldn't even look at me until he would appear. They wouldn't even meet my eye.
Wow.
Remember I was sitting at that one restaurant.
Yeah.
Where were we? Manhattan? I don't remember.
We were in Manhattan.
Yeah, it was like, Manhattan, right?
Yeah.
And I sat there for about 45 minutes because David was off doing something with a friend and he was like, go order drinks, we're coming just now. Not a single waiter looked at me, not one.
Wow.
Not one. I was the only Black woman in that space. I looked around and I saw that. That was the first thing I noted. And that's wild to me because it's New York. How am I the only Black woman in a space in Manhattan in New York? In what was that, 2013? Yeah. How was that possible?
Yeah.
And then for them to be like, oh my goodness. Like, is my money not green enough for you? You know? Making sure I know that we don't want you here. You don't want you don't belong here. That was New York. And I mean, that's the first world country, right?
Yeah.
So the attitudes are interesting. The attitudes are challenging. I'll have to say, third world has been friendlier. We had wonderful experiences in Bali and Mexico, but also more frightening.
Yeah.
There's an edge of if things can go wrong here, they're going to go very wrong.
Yeah.
Like very, very wrong. Like the interaction we had at that market in Bali.
Yeah.
When we got out of that situation, we went to this night market. It's in one of the videos. And the whole night market basically stared at us, followed us, taunted us, screamed at us.
Whoa.
When I got out of that situation, I was trembling. I don't frighten easily. I don't.
Yeah.
But I was scared. I was actually so scared and so upset after that engagement. I couldn't believe it because Bali had been a breeze up to that point. And then to have had that engagement, and all because I was fat, I was Black. I was wearing a crop top, so I had a crop with my tummy out, and I was with David. The reaction to this day, that was the wildest thing I've ever seen.
And then was that the same day we went into the straight bar area, I think? And then we were like, no, bye.
I don't remember.
So around that, I think it was that same day too. We were like, okay, let's go out. And we went to because Bali is kind of, you could say, like a lot of Australians and people party there. And we went to we had been going to the gay bars, but we were like, oh, let's just check out the hetero.
Because I wanted hip hop. I remember. I was like, I want to dance to some hip hop.
And then we lasted even faster than the Marcus.
Oh my God.
And we were like, Okay, let's go back to the
No,
game.
you don't remember. So what
Because
happened?
you're gonna get hate crimed.
No, what happened? We went in, we danced for a bit. And then
You're
these
right, they
these
mocked-
guys who were like gangsters. Do you remember that?
Yes. Oh, I forgot. Yes.
These Balinese gangsters come up in the club, and the one is like taking pictures of me and making
Yes.
fun of me.
Yes. Yes. And
So
we were like,
I
bye.
smacked him. I hit him, and
Oh
then
my
we
goodness.
left.
We're like, bye. Back to the gay area.
It was quite intense in
Yeah.
Bali, actually. Now, and I
Yeah.
remember. Yeah, and then in Mexico, oh dear, Mexico. Mexico wasn't the reaction was not as bad as Bali,
Mhm.
but we did have an engagement in Oaxaca, this tiny town, this beautiful town. That was difficult.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was heckled down the street by a bunch of children.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Because once again, I was in a crop top. You know, fat girl stomachs are not a popular thing.
Yeah.
If you're fat and your tummy's out, people are like coming for you.
Yeah.
I don't want to see your tummy. And then
And the-
David,
Grass.
this little girl, threw a grasshopper at David.
What?
Like this. It was this big. You know?
And did you scream?
We freaked out. I freaked out.
And then they kept calling him anime. Do you remember that?
Yes.
Oh dear.
Yeah, and they kept trying to take pictures of him. That was difficult. That was
Yeah.
hard.
Yeah.
You know, it's reacting to that is always quite hard, because sometimes by trying to overtly defend someone in that situation, you make it worse.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Particularly, like I said, moving in third world spaces where things can flip like that.
Yeah.
So you have to sort of monitor and see, okay, how much am I going to come through here? What am I leaving alone? What's mostly harmless, and what do we need to put a stop to
Yeah.
right now?
And what? Because I'm just reflecting on some of those situations, like
Mm.
calling that behavior out. They obviously in all of those
Mm.
situations knew that it was wrong.
Oh, they know.
It was about our safety.
Yeah.
immediately.
Yeah.
And that's what you've got to think about.
Yeah.
It's so interesting. So after David and I posted that thing about Bali, I had Black women come to me and say, well, that wasn't my experience. And I think that was one of the most hurtful things about that.
Mm.
That hurt me, because it was like, as a Black woman, I expect you to understand that we don't all move the same.
Yeah.
So you're Black and you're thin, and you had a certain experience in Bali that I did not share. And for me, it's that people not giving you grace to understand that we move differently.
Mhm.
Yeah.
We face different challenges. That's the most critical thing, I
Yeah.
think, about just being a person. Recognize that you're not moving, you're not walking the same path that person is walking.
Yeah.
Even if you put their shoes on, you wouldn't walk that same path. So stop trying to minimize the things they've been through. Stop trying to ignore the experiences or the voices they're trying to share and the stories and perspectives they're trying to share. And I think of traveling, that's been one of the strongest lessons that has emerged for me.
Mhm.
Yeah. And we've also just been so lucky too, because
Yeah.
I mean, as horrible as those experiences were,
Mm.
those are some of the most amazing
Right?
trips that I've ever been on was
Yeah.
with you.
Yeah.
We have a nice also energy, I think, when we're able to travel.
Yeah, no, you
Yeah.
can't travel with anyone, even if you love them. You really have to be
Yeah.
careful about
Yeah.
That is a real test of a friendship, is traveling and a relationship.
Yeah.
Well, we're coming to our time. So we will have to ask our favorite question that we ask every single guest at Hot Pot Talks, which is, what is your favorite hot pot ingredient or story, if you have one?
It's dim sum hot pot.
No, I don't think
I've never had hot pot.
Okay.
Okay.
I'll be honest.
Okay.
So I'll be honest.
We need to change that.
yeah. I've never had hot pot, so I don't know.
You need to have hot pot together.
Yeah, so
that
look,
will be
I
the
love
only
all the
homework.
Asian food I've eaten. I love it. Asian food is my favorite food in the world. I love it. But yeah, I haven't had hot pot. No.
We'll need to change that.
Yes.
Yeah.
The thing is, I don't think we can have. Anyway,
They don't
we
do
will
it
change
here,
that.
I don't
We'll
think.
we'll,
Yeah.
we'll
I'm coming
change
back to Vancouver, Jen. We're gonna have hot pot.
that.
Yes. Let's do it.
Yes.
Well, thank you so much, Nomonde. It was such a pleasure talking to you. And I guess you too. Enjoy your dinner. Have a fun rest of your night.
Thanks so
Okay.
much, baby. It was so good to see your
Nice
face
to see you.
again. Take
Yeah.
care of yourself.
Bye.
See you later.